Good evening, everybody. How's it going? Hopefully great. I want to kick off and do a couple disclaimers first and introductions. We have Ada and Grace here. These are my 10th grade students who volunteered to come give a little bit of a student perspective of how to make high school awesome. They're really good examples of it. They're doing excellent jobs at pretty much all of life, but especially being a student. And so they can speak well to a lot of the cool stuff. I do have to apologize for my voice. I don't normally have this deep of a timbre or sound like Darth Vader. I lost my voice a couple days ago and it hasn't quite made it back yet. So I apologize about that. Um, we're going to walk through a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to kind of give you an overview of the school to get started. And then we'll dig into a little bit more about kind of my area of expertise, which I'm a high school counselor. My name is Jeff Reen. So I'll be your student's school counselor throughout high school. And I'll dig into a little bit more content around how that works and the things that you need to know. And I did go into your students, if you're at the North Tahoe school, I went into your students' classrooms about 2 weeks ago now and did a lesson with them. I shared a video recording with y'all. And if you're from Creekside, you can find that on our YouTube page as well. I do, just so you know, as long as technology functions with me, I try to either live stream and or record the stuff that I do. So if for ever any reason you can't make a meeting that I'm holding, you typically can find a recording on it online within a day or two, and we try to send that out. I'm a parent. I have three boys, 9, 5, and 3. And so I know how busy it is and how crazy life after school is with ski teams and pickups and drop-offs and dinners and all that jazz. Okay, so don't stress if you don't make a meeting that you really wanted to. So once again, I'm going to cover a couple kind of nuts and bolts about North Tahoe High School, and then we'll get into kind of a little bit more content. And these lovely ladies will help me along the way, so you'll hear from them during our presentation today. I want to introduce our two administrators at North Tahoe High School. So Ms. Mitchell, Joanna Mitchell, is our principal, and then Mr. Jason Fleesock is our assistant principal. They're typically here at our meeting tonight. However, they are actually presenting at the board meeting, which happens to be taking place right now too. And so they're actually highlighting our school and our ski academy program at the board meeting. So they're both presenting there. So that leaves me solo here. But they're super awesome. It's a privilege to get to work with them. I think you guys are privileged to be able to get to send your students to a school run by them. And so take advantage of some of those things. They're very approachable. They're very open to feedback. So if you have questions or concerns, they're definitely open to sitting down for conversations or shooting you an email or things like that. Okay, so please don't hesitate to reach out. We have a couple celebrations that I'll highlight. I'm not going to read this whole list. I'll just pick a few of these. We do offer many AP classes, oftentimes a fairly high number compared to a school of our size typically would. So we have 13 different AP classes, and our students do a fairly good job at pursuing the content in those classes, being interested in what you're learning in an AP class, and then being successful on the kind of the end of course exam that happens each May. So we're super happy about how our students engage in that challenging curriculum. We, like I mentioned, have a ski academy program. That is one of the big things that North Tahoe High School, I think, is relatively known for in the area, and fairly unique to have for a public school environment. This program allows students who are fairly competitive athletes, typically. A lot of times it's our skiers, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could also be, we have like BMX bikers, we have club soccer players, things like that, that have like multiple hour drives to go to soccer practice and need to have some flexibility with how and when their coursework gets done. And so it's a great opportunity. There are some requirements, and we went over some of that stuff with our students in the classroom lesson. I would encourage you, if you have time after this meeting and are curious about it, I think the board meeting presentation would actually be fairly informative if you wanted to pull that up on the recording and watch the tidbit about our ski academy to save us a little bit of time tonight, because they're covering a lot of the ins and outs of how that actually works. One of the other cool things in relation to that, that's actually, we just celebrated actually on Monday, and the news was here, it was kind of cool, is we have 7 Olympian graduates from our little small school, which I think is pretty sweet. Um, two graduates and one attendee are actually participating in like the next 2 or 3 weeks in Italy. So JC Schoonmaker, AJ Hurt, and Hannah Percy are all competing either in downhill skiing, Nordic skiing, or um, like snowboard cross type of thing. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool. Not many schools outside of kind of your hoity-toity private schools out there can really claim to have that many Olympians from a school of our size. So we're pretty proud of that. We have 3 CT. So CTE is a terminology that you'll start hearing. Your students might have heard from us about that already. I will try to be purposeful about defining acronyms as we go. I realize some of you might not be fully aware what all those acronyms are that we use in education. CTE, not concussions and sports, career technical education, is a great opportunity. It's a big push, especially in the state of California, but across the country. And it's what kind of the old school voc ed, home ec, wood shop has kind of turned into, with a gearing towards hard skills plus relationships to college. And so we have 3 CTE pathways. One of them is culinary, one of them is sports medicine, and one of them is engineering technology. We actually just added a 4th in the last year, starting this coming fall. That will be it's a media technology, so it's our video and music production class sequence. And then we are potentially starting 1 or 2 more, which would begin potentially next year, depending on how our course requests take place, which would be an outdoor adventure recreation focused class. So kind of a rec ski industry type of program. And then we also have a criminal justice and law. So a law sequence, kind of a little bit less lawyer, a little bit more law enforcement focused pathway. And so we're seeing what the results look like from all of our students and then your incoming students, as well as kind of what our capabilities are as a school to potentially offer 1 or even maybe both of those classes in the upcoming year or 2. We do have some award-winning staff members. We have great results in our sports teams, and we really do have pretty much the awesomest student body. We are collegial with our friends at Truckee High School, but we're better than Truckee High School. So we have all fun and games, but no one ever wears red. We wear blue. If you wear red, you kind of get shunned a little bit. But it's a fun, active. 75% of our students take advantage of our sports teams and different outside of school activities. So we're very involved in the various activities around our school. So we would encourage your students, and what we talked about in our our incoming 9th grade meetings was getting involved is one of the key elements of making high school start smoothly and be successful. Okay, so coming to school, doing your best work from day 1, and then getting involved in a club or a sport or some other activity is super, super crucial. So I'm going to touch briefly on this, and then I'm going to let these ladies share a little bit of their active experience in our schedule. So we function on what's called a modified block schedule, different than Truckee High School. Truckee High School is on what's called a 4x4 block. 4 classes, they switch at the semester break to another separate, completely different 4 classes in the second half of the school year. We do not switch halfway through. The coursework that you start in August with us will be the same set of classes that you will finish with us in June. Okay. The modified block component of it comes into play when we have our weekly schedule. Okay, you'll have 6 periods or 6 classes in your given day. And I promise it's harder for me to explain it than your student to actually do it. So bear with me. So you have 6 periods, 3 days a week, usually Monday, Tuesday, Friday. You go to all 6 of your classes for about, 48, 50 minutes or something like that. Where the modified block comes in is we have 2 days that are block schedule, meaning you have alternating periods on either day. So an A-day, so even an odd and then an even day. So 1, 3, 5, that's about an hour and 20-minute class period. So we have a longer extended time for students to do more in-depth work. Maybe it's a longer writing period for English, a lab in biology, maybe a fun activity in your culinary class that you can't do in 45 minutes. Okay, so that happens. In addition, on those 2 days, we have a period called RTI. which is called a response to intervention. That is a support or enrichment period. If your student is sick or out, they get a chance to make up tests or quizzes and things like that. We have open gym. It's an extension opportunity if your student needs a little bit more support. So that happens both of those mornings. And then we also have another period built in that's about 25 minutes. That's called Laker Pathways, and that's a grade level curriculum that each grade level covers about stuff that's important for them to know. And it changes each grade that you're going through high school and what the focus of that time is. Okay? What would you add?
Personally, like I definitely take full advantage of RTI because I'm often gone for like athletic stuff. Like for academic team, I was like missing Monday, so I had to go in during RTI to like sports med and other classes that I had missed. And I was like, "What's up, teachers? Like, what did I miss while I was gone? Like, I don't know if it was on the Google Classroom or not. Like, so yeah, RTI is definitely a big thing to take advantage of, especially if you're in sports, because you tend to miss a lot of your fifth and sixth periods for out of school activities, such as like going to a tennis match in Truckee or something. So, yeah, and personally, I use RTIs for the same reason. If I'm sick, usually for sports, like we'll have a swim meet during fifth and sixth period and we'll be called out of school. So the next day, if we have an RTI period, I'll be like, hey, what's up to my fifth and sixth period teachers? And it's like, what did we miss in class? What can I do right now? Did we have a test? You know, and you valuable RTI periods are very valuable to the student for the reasons said above.
Awesome. In addition, the RTI period also is an intervention. So if your student is struggling for any reason, your teacher can actually require them to be there. So they will put them on a list and they get notified. If they do not go, they join us at lunch bunch. And students don't like lunch bunch. So there's some benefit of making it purposeful to go. So if you're struggling in a class, most likely you'll end up on an RTI list for a period of time until you're not struggling so much. And then you get some purposeful help and directed effort from that teacher. I'm going to do my best with some of this. I am not a teacher, so I don't use the actual rubric on a day-to-day basis, but I'm going to give you my best interpretation. So if you're confused for anything that I say on the next two slides, feel free to reach out and follow up with us. I can either explain more in depth about a particular question or make sure I get the right answer from someone who does work with this content every single day. Little different than middle school is we have a slightly different grading scheme. Okay, we have two types of grades that we're looking at. So in our kind of day-to-day work, the stuff that students are doing in classes, teachers are grading students based on a rubric. Okay, and this is an example of a rubric, and they're scored kind of like in middle school on a 1 to 4, or they do 1 to 4, we do 0 to 4. And ultimately, it goes up the progression list to your highest tier at the top with the 4. So this is stuff that teachers will help train students in terms of how to understand where they're at on a rubric. And one of the goals of a rubric is to make learning understandable. So you know, what do I need to show or do to improve? It's not just some random ethereal thing that, like, how do I get an A? I don't know. Like, here's exactly the things that we need to do to get an A. Okay, and you'll see this for units potentially. You'll see this maybe for an exam. You will see this potentially even for an individual project that you're doing. Okay, so teachers will share some of this stuff with students and make this accessible. But this is something that you'll start seeing. One note that you will see is timeliness in most cases is not actually built into the total overall score in their actual performance grade. Okay, so it's not factored into things like how well you did or didn't do on your integrated math test. Okay, however, teachers can have a timeliness policy regarding anything like from makeup work. Okay, so you must turn in something by the due date to have a chance at making it up is a very common one. Okay, like sometimes like a professionalism part of the grade might be up to like maybe 10% of an overall grade for getting in homework on time or attention to detail or things like that. Okay, now transitioning more to our larger scale grade. Okay, that's more kind of micro. We got to go macro now, and so we're looking at what are our grades at the end of, say, a progress report or our final grade at the end of the semester, which makes up our high school transcript, which is a very important document that your student will start accruing grades on. So those are basically translated by Aries, our information system, from this kind of number here is populated from kind of that 4-point rubric. All of those grades kind of get thrown into the system, and they have different weightings and things like that. And your teacher's syllabus at the start of the school year will kind of cover how that kind of functions a little bit. And then it gets translated into your more kind of more typical letter grade of A through F. A is the best, F, and we're talking. Okay, so Fs are not great in high school. Okay, Fs mean you don't earn graduation credit. Fs are no good. So if you get an F, we're going to have a really decent conversation. Who are my 8th graders from next door? Raise your hand. Okay, quiz time. Right here. What's your name? Yeah, you. Jackson, what's the minimum grade to go to college? Do you remember? Were you there when I came into the lesson? Okay, I won't put you on. Who's there? Okay, what's the minimum grade? Do you C? Yes, good, you listened. C minus or higher is actually the minimum grade. C's for college, D's for degrees. Okay, so high school diplomas, you must have a D or higher in all of your grades to graduate. C or higher is for our A through G or college level requirements. Okay, so that's a very big important thing that we really try to drill into students' heads. We obviously want students to do as best as they possibly can throughout the school year. Okay. Link Crew is another opportunity that we've really leaned into. It is kind of like a little bit like web in middle school, if you remember that, where it's kind of an orientation, fun, connecting you to the new school environment. Link Crew is a hyped up version of that. And so our upperclassmen, our juniors and seniors typically, will work with students in little pods or groups or crews, I guess they call them, and do fun activities. There's a kind of a 4-hour long or so 9th grade orientation in that week leading up to the start of school. And the whole goal is to try to help our incoming 9th graders who are oftentimes very nervous, starting this big thing called high school, not really knowing what's going on, feel embedded already within the community on the first day of school. Okay, so they already know upperclassmen, they already know teachers, they know myself, they'll meet Miss Mitchell, so they walk into school more comfortable and ready to learn. Okay, so it'll be a cool thing. You will hear more about this, but just keep an eye out on our summer mailers and stuff that will come out, because it will cover information about that Link Crew orientation event, which is about a week before school starts. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. I don't have a particular date right now, or I would share that with you. Grit is another program that we offer on campus, and this is a program that we've been running for, 7 or 8 years now, and it's been really successful. The focus of our Grit program, which connects also to our CCR, or College and Career Readiness classes, which we have in 9th, 11th, and 12th grades, is primarily focused at first gen, potentially first gen college students. Okay, so meaning a direct family member maybe hasn't gone to college or has a degree from a college of some type. Okay, navigating the college process is fairly complex, and so we kind of designed this program to help students and families kind of understand a very changing environment of college, as well as kind of a expensive and time-consuming process. Okay, so this is a program that we did actually just this week also have kind of an information session. We took nominations from our 8th grade teachers of students they felt would be good fits for this program, and so we had an informational session with them. If for some reason you think you didn't come to that meeting and you would like to be a part of Grit or our CCR classes, talk to me. It's not limited to just students who are recommended, and it might be a good fit for you. So feel free to reach out if that's something that you're interested in. There are some commitments on the side of the screen that we ask families to do their best to reach. The ghost. Our lighting ghost is here. We do have a lot of clubs. I'm just going to mention that if you have a club, if your kid's like, I love Dungeons and Dragons, and they want to make a club, we can make a club. Okay, so we need a couple students and a faculty advisor, and a club can start. Lego club, badminton club, culinary cooking eating club. I would join that one. Okay. That's a fun one to do. Okay, but there's a whole bunch of existing clubs, and we usually have a club of Palooza outside in the beginning of the school year. So this is another way. Maybe athletics isn't your thing. Joining a club, it's another opportunity to get involved. What would you guys have?
Us personally, I know I'm part of book club. I don't know if you could tell, but I'm like a huge nerd. So, book club is definitely the thing I'm going for. And then we also are doing academic team, which is like a 4 hour, 2 hour trivia sesh in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. How fun is that? And um, we haven't really done the rest of the clubs, but from what we've heard from other people and our friends who have done it, they all find clubs very enjoyable. And yeah.
I think the best thing about clubs is it gets you to interact with people you wouldn't normally on a regular basis. So like take one person from like Creekside and North Tahoe and they don't have any classes together and they have a club together. You get to meet new people and I think that's really fun and exciting and it gets you to meet new perspectives.
Awesome. I mentioned Ski Academy a little bit. Here are some of the details, just so you know. It started in 2007. It was kind of picked up steam in the early 2011, 2012 timeframe. We have about between 85 and 95 students, which is almost a quarter of our school on any given year. And so it is a large population. We also have a great staff member. Her name is Laura Delorier, and she is our Ski Academy and Independent Study Coordinator, and she helps students navigate sometimes the complexities of both being potentially a high-level athlete with a lot of training and outside of school commitments, in addition to things like navigating sometimes our complex attendance system and independent study process of paperwork and things like that. Okay, we do have 2 tiers of Ski Academy. One of them is more suited for like I play some sports or I do this activity, but really kind of just miss a couple days here and there for competitions and stuff. That would be tier 1, meaning you're going to take all of your classes at school as normal, and you're just going to maybe need to have some excused opportunities to say go pursue your activities outside of school here and there throughout the year. Tier 2 is a little bit more intense, and that's really geared towards students who really must miss school to say train frequently or do their activity that they couldn't otherwise do with a full set of classes. Okay, I do encourage students really, and I have conversations about this almost daily. I had one this morning about think about your needs and your wants. Okay, because there's always a trade-off. If you do this program, it doesn't make school necessarily easier. You're potentially going to be moving classes to an independent study format, which means you're going to be teaching yourself or trying to teach yourself content. And so it's just some people can do that pretty well, but I encourage people to really weigh the pros and cons and do what's important for you, but just know like you might be gaining something, but that like with most things, you might be losing something too. Independent study sometimes means you gain flexibility, but potentially you lose interaction or like day-to-day discussions, things like that. So there's a fine line and balance for everybody, but it's a really awesome program. A lot of students participate. Here's some great photos of our kids racing and winning medals and fun things like that. So now I'm going to talk about the stuff that I actually really know about. So there are 2 of us at this school. So again, my name is Mr. Ream. So I work with all of the even graduating classes. So class of 2030, which is your students, crazy, is an even graduating class. So that's me. And then Miss Jengo Cohen will work with all of our odd graduating classes. Okay, so you may or may not, you'll probably primarily hear from me. However, there are certain circumstances like she might be coordinating certain things or communicating about some different activities. So just know if you hear from Miss Jengo Cohen, she's me, but a different person. Whoa, there's a lot of words on this slide. This is you guys. You guys get to rock and roll.
Right, so we're supposed to talk about apparently the difference between high school and middle school. So personally, from my experience, high school, it's a lot easier for me at least because I know the teachers will tell you what they want, what they expect of you. They will make it very clear. They'll have it like on their syllabus most of the time anyway, like unit breakdowns, and during tests they'll give you like a study guide sometimes, and they'll be like, okay, like you do this, you'll get a 4. You do this, you'll get a 3, so on and so forth. So I think it's just more clearly defined plan on like how to get the grades you want. Well, also high school is a lot more. I would say, go on, Grace. Talk for.
I think the biggest thing is in middle school, grades are kind of important, but high school, this is going on your transcripts that colleges are seeing. So your grades are definitely more important, and it's more important for you to keep up with missing assignments. If you have missing assignments, get those done right away. Everything else like that. You will have homework sometimes. Usually teachers try not to give you homework because they understand a lot of students are in sports. And there are finals. I wouldn't stress too much about finals. Your teachers will prepare you about 2 weeks ahead of time for them, but they are a thing and they will affect your grade.
I found high school to be a little more fun because you get offered so many more classes. Like personally, I'm doing the CTE of engineering right now, and I'm in engineering too, and I find um, that class to be very enjoyable. And I don't think, well, obviously we weren't really offered like specialized classes in middle school. So I think if you're passionate about something, high school's a good like time to like go more in depth into it, especially if our high school happens to offer a class about something you're passionate in.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would say I would add a couple things. We do offer a lot more freedom and autonomy. So I think that's one of the biggest differences that students who come in as ninth graders will start to feel. Um, Mostly for good, sometimes for redirection. But it's something that I think generally is a breath of fresh air for students coming into the high school. We give you a lot more opportunity to fail or step up to the occasion. Right? And so I think for the most part, students that come into ninth grade do a fairly good job at stepping up to the opportunity for more responsibility. I will point out the time management piece is often a struggle, especially for ninth and 10th graders. Um, Students will have 6 classes. You will have time in class to do your work or screw around. If you choose to screw around in class, then that work becomes homework typically, and especially in ninth grade, that's kind of where the bulk of kind of the true homework assignment actually comes from. So if your kids are coming home frequently with like 2 hours of homework, it might be your cue to stop and say, how are you spending your time in class? Because they probably shouldn't come home generally with 2 hours worth of homework if they're using their class time wisely. Okay, 30 minutes would be a little more reasonable expectation for that. Occasionally, maybe a little bit longer, but if it's every day, that's not generally typical. Okay. And yeah, finals are a thing. Most of the time, it's going to be different depending on the class in terms of what students are going to be expected to do. Cool. And then these ladies are going to talk to you about the next 3 things about studying and a couple other tips and tricks for being successful.
Okay. So me and Grace were like number one nerds, so we've kind of mastered the art of studying over the past couple of years. And I mean, so far, all we can say is time management, as Reem said, was very important. And I think like good ways to manage your time is either like using a calendar, using a planner, creating a to-do list for what you are supposed to do once you get home, so you can like figure out like what assignments you need to do, and you can catch up on any missing work or just try to prevent that from happening. And let's see, studying. So I would say studying depends on like what type of coursework and what classes you sign up for. So if you sign up for harder classes, you're kind of gonna expect to have like harder homework or just more homework in general. But I think what's important is just like trying to stay on top of said work, and like as Reem said, trying not to screw around in class too much, or in my case, gossip.
I think one of the most helpful study tips is to take breaks. So if you do like 30 minutes of studying, take like a 5-minute break, walk around your room, clean up your room, organize your desk, do something. And then I think it's also important to balance studying and, doing other things like calling a friend. Like, you don't want to be studying for 2 hours without getting any social interaction. So, call a friend, walk your dog, do something outside of studying, but definitely build it in your schedule. And like how Ada said, planning it in your calendar, time blocking it out is super helpful.
So let's see. Oh yeah, getting involved. So me and Grace are also very involved nerds. I don't know if you can tell, but so personally, we do competitive swimming for the high school. Awesome, by the way. Totally should sign up next year. We do tennis with Lance Roney, who is the integrated math 3 math teacher, as well as pre-calc and AP calculus. And I mean, we convinced him to wear a tennis skirt, so he's obviously the best tennis coach. So he coaches girls tennis for the high school. And swim team, also very fun. I mean, you get to go to the middle of nowhere, Nevada, and swim against like 100 other people. Very fun stuff. But just getting involved in general is a really good way to help like socialize and make high school more fun, because what's good after like a whole week of studying and doing school is being like, oh yeah, I'm going to a football game where hopefully our football team doesn't lose this time.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about joining some fall sports is fall sports start before school starts. So you get to meet a lot of people that you normally wouldn't talk to, like other freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. And whenever you walk into school that first day of school, you're like, oh, I know you. I already have friends here, so I think it's really it's really helpful to your success if you get involved with sports and other clubs. Attendance. Showing up matters because it's a lot easier to be taught by somebody else who knows what they're teaching instead of trying to teach yourself the material.
Talking from experience, considering I've missed quite a few days due to sports and other school-related activities, attendance does matter, because I've seen friends who kind of like fall off the bandwagon because they just like skip class, and I'm like, guys, are you doing okay? Like, what's your grade in sports? Because currently I feel like I'm at a, I don't know, I'm like just barely hanging on to my A. I don't know how you guys are doing it, but like, and also it's just so much harder to do the work like that you're supposed to do in class outside, like at home, because like honestly, work that takes me like 30 minutes in class, I'll spend like an hour doing it at home, being like, oh my god, what am I doing? How do I balance chemical equations, Miss McGuire? And so I think it's just very helpful to show up to class and attend class every once in a while or more.
And also doing schoolwork in a classroom, you don't have your bed right there tempting you, so perks.
Yeah, in our 8th grade lesson, one of the things that I told them too was there's a lot of really smart people with a lot of acronyms after their name that like to do math and research and all this fancy stuff. And they looked and said, for students to be successful in school, what's one of the biggest things that impacts that? And the number one thing that they were able to find with tens of thousands of students looking at across the country was, number one is their 9th grade year, how they started high school, and part of that was how well they attended school. If you are here, it's hard to fail. Okay, if you are not here, it's a lot harder for you to be as successful as you could be. Okay, we do have a number of resources. So we have a wellness center on campus. We'll give you guys an opportunity. We'll walk you around and give you kind of a facilities tour when we're done here. So we can show you that space. It's a great opportunity. Middle school next door also has a wellness center. They function fairly similarly. Like I said, we have 2 counselors, so it's myself and Ms. Django Cohen. Our teachers are very supportive and work with students, especially if you are absent, to try to get you back caught up. And then our administration helps proactively address attendance or reactively address attendance as well. So if attendance becomes a thing, then we start having different kinds of conversations about coming to school and kind of making sure that's a priority for us, and or addressing any barriers, right? So sometimes there's things that are in the way, or illnesses or things that pop up, and trying to make referrals or support systems and getting those things kind of set up. So I'm going to highlight some of the stuff that we talked about briefly with some of the 8th graders about some different classes for next year. Okay, so I'm a big fan of balance, homeostasis, kind of keeping things in order. This is the stuff we kind of went over with your 8th graders, soon to be 9th graders, also in the lesson that we sent out in the video. But I'll give you the quick overview. One of the things that we encourage and kind of actually start all students on is this path called your A through G requirements. Your A through G requirements are all the minimum expectations that you need to submit or have on your transcript to apply to our four-year college systems in California. That kind of is the golden standard across that we use for basically every university out there. Once again, these are the minimum expectations. It does not mean that you are necessarily competitive in that world. And there's a difference between those two things. Okay, so I want to point that out. So this is an example of the A through G requirements down there. Once again, what grade? C minus or better. Okay, that's the major target. If you get a D, you can still graduate high school, but we would have to remediate or make up that credit to then reopen, in most circumstances, that door to that college application process. The good news is about this A through G is it's almost exclusively built into our graduation requirements. There are very few things that differ. And in 9th grade, literally almost nothing differs. Okay, so I want to take the pressure off of you guys. Like, I get a lot of questions, and it's understandable, about what if we do this? What if we do that? What if we do this? And those are excellent questions, but I want to take the pressure off is that we got you. Okay, we will not let you not take the classes you need to keep the doors open. Okay, you will, like, to be honest, you would have to come talk to me and convince me why you shouldn't do these things versus the other direction. Okay, so that's a big thing. Our graduation requirements, if you look at this one down here and then compared it to this one right here, you'll notice it's fairly similar. Okay, I'm going to point out a few slight differences. Okay, so number one is you need, and this is actually, you need 3 years of history, actually. I don't know why that's wrong. Oh, they broke out government economics, that's why. History is 2, world and US, plus government economics for 3. The differences are going to be this. In the A through G, you need 2 years of a world language, the same world language, okay, and 1 year of a fine or performing art. To graduate high school, it's 1 year of any of those things. Okay, so that's one distinct difference. A through G does not include things like PE and health. CTE is not a requirement for college, but it is a requirement for graduation. Okay, all of our CTE classes are college prep level though, so they are all beneficial in working towards that college application process. And then you need 220 credits. You actually graduate based on the number of credits you earn. You earn 10 credits for every year of a class that you successfully pass. Okay, so if you do the math, that's 22 minimum classes to graduate high school. Generally, that's 6 classes in 9th, 10th, 11th, and then as few as 4 in your senior year. So this is what a typical 9th grade schedule kind of looks like. All right. So some of these are automatically populated, and there's really no options. Okay, so I'll just highlight those first, get those out of the way. So English is the first one. Every student in 9th grade will take pre-AP English 1. Okay, it's 1 class, 1 option. It is all pre-AP for everyone. Pre-AP is essentially the same as honors. That is the class that is designed by the College Board to lead into AP English, language, and literature later on in high school. Math is another class that all students will take in 9th grade. A little bit different than in years past, where we took a little bit of like poetic license, I guess, with placement, or opinion-based placement. We are using data this year. The district has decided that we will be placing students based on what they show us they can do, not what they tell us they can do. Okay, we've done a lot of looking at the information and kind of where math lives, and kind of like connected a lot of the information together. And so I didn't put it in the slide deck, but on the information that was sent home as well as our website, there's some placement criteria in relation to math. Okay, and there's a couple of benchmarks that students would need to meet given what class you're in right now, how's your performance. And I'll just give you the high-level overview. One of the metric areas will be your iReady test score. Okay, so you're doing those tests. That is one major benchmark we'll be using. We also be looking at your 7th and 8th grade CAST scores. Those are those end of year math exams that you'll take. And then your performance in the actual class, so your grade in that class. Now, I know that some students are like, well, we just did that, and I don't know if I did so well. Okay, we do this in 2 waves. Can we take a first evaluation? So we will actually get that very soon, prior to me coming back into the middle school classes at least, on the 18th. So we'll have our first placement round before then. So we'll be adding classes to students' schedules based on that criteria. Now, if your student is not where they want to be, you have the next 4 or 5 months to work on getting there. Okay, so there's this middle of the year iReady test score. You haven't taken the 8th grade CAST test. So that happens later in the spring, as well as the end of year iReady test score and your final grade in whatever math class you're in. We will relook at all of that data to make sure that we have you accurately placed. Okay? So just understand, like, we are trying to calibrate what that looks like and make sure that this is reflective of the placement that helps students be most successful. Okay, when we were doing more kind of opinion-based approach to it, there was a lot of misplacement, unfortunately, and it impacted students. Typically, like, if we put them in a higher class, they struggled, and that's not really a great feeling to have in math, and it also is not a great place to be grade-wise. Okay, and so we're shifting. The district is shifting to a much more dedicated approach and a more consistent approach to math placement. Lab science. So your first lab science in 9th grade is biology. So all students will take biology next year. This is one of the areas that you might have to come argue with me if you don't want to have your student do this. This is one of those things that you have to convince me why you shouldn't do it, and that's taking your language class. Okay, this starts you on that A through G path. It would take, there are a few cases where it's like, that's a decent reason why. Okay, but if you're in that boat, it's very few, but come talk to me if that's the case. But generally, students will go into one of 2 places. Spanish 1, okay, so that's like, hola, ¿cómo estás? Okay, and Spanish 3 for Spanish speakers is for typically our students who are either native Spanish speakers or have gone through the immersion program most of the way through and are fairly fluent. It's both classes are academic Spanish, so just speaking Spanish doesn't necessarily like totally qualify you if it's just kind of like conversational. You have to actually be able to start reading and writing stuff too. Okay, so it's a little more academic focused. And then the 5th one is PE Health. This class functions both on campus and through independent study. So independent study PE is if you're playing 2 school sports and can remain eligible, 2.0, no Fs, okay? Those are the 2 benchmarks. Then it might be a good opportunity for you to get your PE credit out of the way through your sport activity. Unless you were wanting to exercise and get jitters out at school, totally great, viable reason why to have PE class at school too. We also have PE at school where you go play soccer and frisbee and do all the stuff that typical PE classes have. And if you have freshman boys that are anything like I imagine my boys are, PE is probably a good thing. Okay? But there is an independent study PE class. And so what that would do is if you did that option, it basically creates a 7th class. And then it does provide an opportunity to maybe slot one more class that's maybe a little fun in the mix. Okay, so that's 5 classes. We have one last class that students will then get to choose from. So realistically, most people's decision making for 9th grade is this, PE at school or not. If it's not at school, then you have 2 boxes to pick from your elective options. Most of the time, I encourage a CTE class, culinary, engineering, sports medicine, video production, things like that. And then if you have 2 slots, throw in a art class in there as well. It's a good idea. Ceramics, photography, drawing, band, okay? Some students might also have support classes that are required, either ELD or learning center programs for students with IEPs or disabilities. That will, fortunately or unfortunately, take up one of these spots, okay? So just know that that will occupy one of those boxes to choose from, and those are actually pre-assigned as well, okay? So grand scheme of things, all that said, your decisions are actually fairly simple, I hope, right? And basic, like you're choosing kind of what do I want to pursue, and what do we want to learn about as a freshman, and what are we going to get excited about taking next year in relation to CTE and elective-based courses. Okay. Ooh, that is not the right button. So we talked about some of this stuff. I'll let these ladies talk about some of the classes that they've taken on this list. But these are some of the other things that would fill those empty boxes of courses. I will have questions in just a minute, so save it.
Personally, I've taken photography and ceramics, and so has my twin Grace. Photography is really fun, especially if you like developing film, because then you can go up to your grandparents, and you can be like, guess what I learned how to do today? They'll be like, what? And you'll be like, I learned how to use a film camera, and they'll be like, that old thing? And you'll be like, yeah, it's really cool. Anyway, and we have like a whole dark room and stuff, and it's all very cool. As you can tell, developing film was kind of like my thing whenever I did photography. And then we also have ceramics. Ceramics is very fun. Messy though, but like, just don't show up to school in a white t-shirt, or if you do, bring a change of clothing. But yeah, ceramics was a very fun class. I think it was a little more technical than photography, but I mean, both were still amazing fine arts credits to get. And then personally, I've done engineering 1. I really enjoyed that class. And I'm also doing engineering 2, which is like the follow-up class afterwards. Very informative. I really enjoyed both of those. I think last year engineering 1 was my favorite class. So yeah. And I'm gonna let Grace talk.
Okay, I agree. Don't wear a white t-shirt to ceramics unless you don't like that t-shirt. I did Sports Med 1 last year. I think it was an amazing class. I got my first aid and CPR certification. I learned how to pack wounds. I thought it was a very hands-on class, and that was the best part about that class. And photography, I thought it was a really fun class. Developing film was one of the most amazing things to do in there. And one time we had this volunteering experience where we developed film for the History Museum in Tahoe City, which was really cool. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, and so there's a whole bunch of other classes. I would encourage you, some of the information that we've sent out, we also, like if you have it buried in your email inboxes or things like that, it always lives on our website as well. Okay, so our counseling website, if you just type in North Tahoe High School Counseling, I try to do a lot of work to make it as informative as possible. We are only here certain times of the day. That website's available anytime you are, so you can access a lot of the information or recordings of videos and stuff like that anytime you'd like. We're almost wrapped up. We'll have a few minutes for questions when we are, and then we'll have an opportunity for some tours at the end if you want to stick around. So just give you an idea of where we're at in the project. So we talked about CTE pathways a little bit. We're excited about those new classes. I'll just add to the pathway component. The word pathway means that each CTE class has 2 courses part of it. Okay, so in 9th grade, you'll obviously take part 1, right, if you took a CTE class. If you chose to then take the second half, it does a couple things. One is the second half of that class is more advanced, so you're going to take the first class and dig deeper and further into it. And they're usually in the same kind of general vein, but they're not necessarily the same class. An example might be our video production and video editing class. They don't take like video editing to the next level, but they do a complementary class that helps you learn the process of media production. Okay, so, but a lot of them are kind of the next layer. If you do 2 classes and do them successfully, you actually qualify for what's called being a CTE pathway completer, which is a great resume builder. It's good on college applications. You get fancy sashes at awards night and graduation and things like that. And so we encourage students, if you have time and interest in doing a CTE pathway and want to be a completer, it's a great opportunity to. It is not, I'll just fair warn everybody in this room, if you take a CTE in 9th grade, it is not uncommon that you might not take the second one in your 10th grade. Okay, so just so you know, it's not uncommon to take level 1 in 9th grade potentially and not take level 2 until your junior or senior year. Okay, that's because in 10th grade we have the addition of history. Okay, 9th grade students don't have a history class. And so in 10th grade we add history. So basically 5 classes are essentially required core classes, and they usually will continue a language in that second year. So that's the 6th. We'll skip this. That's not as crucial for tonight. I'd rather answer questions when we get the time. So we do want to just recognize that parent, you all here, thank you for coming, first of all, but two, I want to encourage you to keep coming to the informational sessions. It's very important. Like, we see a big dramatic drop off in parent participation. Some of it's natural, but some of it we wish we saw a little bit more of you throughout the high school experience. And it's not so much that you need to do everything for your children, but it's so that you know what's going on in your children's lives. Okay, you can help them navigate. Like, they are growing up, they're getting older, becoming more independent. So they still need you, but just how they need you looks different. Okay, so we want to encourage you guys. We value the partnership working with you all as parents. So please don't drop off as soon as you drop them off first day of school. See you later, have fun, and then we don't see you again until graduation. Okay, that's not the goal that we have. All right, so just helping be partners with us, reiterate the stuff that you're hearing us tell students is very helpful. Hey, study. Hey, let's go to school. Let's be on time. Things like that. I'm sure you're doing all that already, but it's very helpful. Okay, PTO is super important. So is boosters. We have a fan club, which is if you're a band student or your student is a band person, there's a band fan club. But PTO is a parent-teacher organization. They organize a lot of different activities throughout the school year, both for socializing as parent groups, but also in helping different school functions and things like that. And then boosters is our athletic support program. So they support different components of buying certain things for athletic teams or funding different things, and they raise money throughout the year and support that process. All right, let's see. There we go. We're here. Questions. All right, so it is now 5:53. We'll take the next 7 to 10 minutes and answer questions if there are any, and if there are not, we'll jump out. But if we get to 6, I'll pause the questions. We'll go ahead and take our tour, and then I can stick around for a few minutes afterwards and answer any follow-up questions. The tour will probably take us about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll be out here no later than probably about 6:20. Okay, so can I answer? I saw a question over here first, so make sure you're loud so I can hear you. So 1 and 3 is what we place students into initially, but yes, Spanish is the only class that we have on campus. And so 1 and 3 is where we place incoming freshmen, but there are Spanish 1, 2, 3, 4, Spanish 3 for Spanish speakers, or Spanish 3 SS is that entry point for our native Spanish speakers or our dual enrollment or a dual immersion students. So that's a more advanced level. You have to know Spanish to go in that class. And then the next one after that, Spanish 3 for Spanish speakers, is our AP Spanish language class. So there are other ones. Those are just the 2 entry places. We do not place students in other class levels at that point because you really need to have a conversation with that teacher to really determine if that placement is incorrect. Okay, I understand quite a bit of Spanish, but I don't speak Spanish enough to evaluate somebody. And so we place students in 2 places. And then if for some reason you're like misplaced, we will very quickly figure that out on the first day or 2 of school. Yes, we don't have any sort of placement metric prior to that. Yeah, and we try to do our best to advise. Like, if you tell me like we speak very good Spanish, like we do a pretty decent job of figuring that out. But generally speaking, yes, those are the 2 places that we put students. Okay, great question. Thank you. Any other questions? I know there's burning questions out there. Yes. You guys. Yeah. I don't sit in class, so they're probably better at answering that than me.
Personally, I think it depends on the class because like there's some differences. Like in AP Hug today, we had like an hour and a half lecture, and I was taking notes, and I was like, Miss Barker, you gotta slow down. My hand can't keep up. But then sometimes we'll have like class periods where she'll talk for like 5 minutes, and then we'll like end up doing a group project, like a poster or something. And same with like engineering and a lot of other classes. So I think it just varies depending on like the day, if it's a block period or not, and like how much the teacher likes lecturing, because some like to lecture more than others.
I think it also depends on if it's a core class or not. So generally speaking, on like a Monday, Tuesday, or Friday 6 period day, the instruction time will usually be about 15 minutes, and then the rest is work time, or sometimes it's 20 minutes for instruction time. So it's usually about half the period, if not a little bit less than that.
Yeah, excellent. And so, yeah, definitely varies by class, by subject, and also by grade. So I think we approach kind of like high school very developmentally, right? So in ninth grade, like we don't just throw you to the wolves and expect you to just like swim. There's like things in place for ninth graders, and then it changes for 10th graders, and so on and so forth until you're in 12th grade and then ready to launch. And you're kind of expected to do a lot more of that managing component, a lot more kind of independent work and like time management and figuring out what I need to do in my project. Where in ninth grade, it's going to be a lot more structured and organized by the teacher. But yeah, I would say, like you said, probably about half and half is pretty, either they'll have a collaborative work time, or they might have an assignment that they've been working on for a couple of days and they have time to complete it or work towards that completion. Cool. Good. Yes. So Mr. Kranz has sent out a couple emails. We go through Jeff, your principal, your head, or whatever you call them. I just call him Jeff, which is my name too, so that's easy to remember. But yes, we go through him. We sent out a reminder about tonight, and then we sent out the email. We sent out a newsletter about the process for enrollment. It does look different for students who are not North Tahoe school students. So our North Tahoe school students, we actually we pre-enroll all of our feeder school students, and we actually do the enrollment process in the next couple of weeks. Our non-NTS school students, there is an active enrollment process that will happen much later in the springtime. So go back I would encourage you to maybe go back in your emails, probably towards the start of January is my guess is when he sent that out, because that's when we sent it to him. If not, reach out to him and he can for sure resend it. It was a letter of introduction and kind of like spelling out kind of what I just talked about, kind of the enrollment process, timeframes, information about tonight, tour listings, things like that. From Liz. I don't know who Liz is. Oh, yes, Liz for us, but not for Creekside. Correct, yes. Yeah, so if you don't get it or it's not in your inbox, reach out to Jeff and he can definitely pass that along. All right, I can maybe take one or two more questions. Yes. Correct. So, question was, just in case you didn't catch it, was we do grades and then weighting and unweighting. It's like orientation 1.2, but we'll jump into it. So when we have students that take advanced placement or AP courses, which no freshman will, those grades are honored for the rigor level in your GPA calculation with what is called a weight. Typically, grades get a point system assigned to it. So an A equals 4, B equals 3, and so on and so forth. All those grades get added up, and then you divide by the number of classes you take, and that's your grade point average. Now, when a student takes an AP course, the first one typically starts in 10th grade with maybe AP Human Geography or AP Spanish. Those AP courses get a weighted GPA. So an A would equal 5 points instead of 4 points, and so on and so forth down the line to C. Okay, so that's where you might, we report both sides, but you might hear of someone getting a 4.1 GPA or things like that. That's how you get that, is through this weighted GPA process. Okay, an unweighted GPA, if you get 1B, your GPA will never, ever, ever again be a 4.0. Mathematically impossible. Your weighted GPA could still go above a weighted 4.0. Okay, so that's a little bit of a difference there. One more question if you got them. Otherwise, we'll break up into a couple groups. Cool. All right, so here's how this will work. I'm going to stop my recording up here in a second. We're going to break up into 3 different groups. I am the only person with a key, so I'm going to lead and they're going to follow, and I'm going to leave some doors open along the way. But it's a facility tour, okay? So we're not like going super in depth. We're going to look at a couple of classrooms. We'll go take a look at the gym. We're in the auditorium. Okay, so this is our auditorium. And it's not going to be that different if you're at North Tahoe School. It's very similar. But we'll show you a couple of classrooms like our culinary room or engineering room and things like that, just to get an idea of the layout of the school. And then we can answer little questions along the way potentially too. Great. So we'll circle back and end up here, and then we'll just feel free to leave whenever you need to. When I get back, I can stick around for maybe 5 or 10 more minutes and answer any short last questions. And then thank you all for joining me. So I'll thank you tonight, and then we'll meet right out here. You can meet Ada, Grace, and I, and we will get going.